Friends, welcome to this program on concept mapping and digital learning. We will look at concept mapping as a technique to best represent curriculum, syllabus, teaching, learning, even assessment, and to what extent concept mapping would facilitate digital learning today through networks, through online learning, e-learning, and so on and so forth. As you see on your screen, concept map got developed after the heuristic theory came into, and especially the Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives that were propagated by Benjamin S. Bloom and colleagues, and gradually the cognitive, psychomotor, and affective domains of learning got established in teaching learning in school and college and university education in almost all disciplines. Side by side, as a parallel development, besides many such facilitative mechanisms which could facilitate to organize curriculum, to design syllabus, teaching learning of topics and subtopics, process of teaching learning, use of media and technology, and finally to design and develop an assessment rubric for student assessment, both formative as well as summative. All these were facilitated by many such developments, and one of such developments is a concept map. As you will see that Professor Joseph Nobeck at Cornell University in the 60s gave this idea that the concept map, by drawing concepts or map of concepts, linkages of concepts would in different ways that we will see in this program, would facilitate teaching learning better than what it would be otherwise. So what is a concept map? It is a technique for representing knowledge in graphs, networks of concepts. Various concepts, if they can be joined together, they can be graphed together through varieties of processes and representations that we'll see in this program. Therefore, the concepts and their networks connected through what is called a concept map, they would best represent the organization and representation of knowledge, which will facilitate the students and teachers as well as the evaluators in visualizing how best learning could take place, or how best instructional design could happen, and how best the learning goals could be achieved. What is a network? The network is a nodes and links. These are nodes and links which best represent a network. What a network has to do? The network has to generate ideas through brainstorming, etc. They have to design a complex structure, say long textbooks, hypermedia, large websites. This is a complex structure. Communicate complex ideas. So through this network of concepts, that is a concept map, they would facilitate design a complex structure. They would communicate complex ideas. They would be able to aid learning by explicitly integrating new and old knowledge, and therefore concept maps would facilitate that. We will see in this program. And finally, concept maps would facilitate assessment of understanding or diagnosis of misunderstanding, and therefore diagnosis of misunderstanding and therefore intervention through specialized programs to enhance learning, or to assess understanding and learning from time to time through formative assessment, and at the end of the semester or end of the year through summative assessment would facilitate teaching learning better. And concept map would facilitate all of these that you see on your PowerPoint. What is a concept map? When David Ausubel developed his cognitive psychology, basically the idea was that the assimilation of new concepts and propositions into existing concept propositional framework held by the learner. So the learners, through developmental stages, as you would have seen in Piaget's development, most of the learning which takes place through recognition at 0 to 3 years of age of the child, and when gradually the learner develops, with Piaget's theory of development is through developmental ages of learning at different stages, childhood, adolescent, youth, and so on and so forth. And as much as a child grows, by growth and teaching learning in schools, colleges, university, family, and elsewhere, with peers also, that the existing concept propositional framework that the individual student has, that would enhance by assimilation of new concept and propositions. So therefore, Ausubel's theory would talk about that how best the existing conceptual understanding of individuals and individual students and children could be connected with assimilation of new concepts, and how this new concept acquisition would further assimilate within the cognitive structure. That cognitive psychology of Ausubel was further facilitated by the application of the strategy or the technology of concept mapping. Meaningful learning is very important here to explain that learning which is conceptually clear, that there is a linkage to prior knowledge, and the individual has the choice to learn meaningfully. So all these, that clarity, conceptual clarity, linkage to prior knowledge, as well as freedom or the choice to learn and learn meaningfully. So meaningfulness in learning would happen when there is conceptual clarity, there is a linkage to the prior knowledge, and individual student has the freedom to choose the pathways to learn the best. So so as we have said, the behavioristic psychology, the Bloom's taxonomy, the Ausubel's cognitive psychology, and the meaningful learning all put together would be facilitated by what is called a concept map. As you see on the screen, this is a representation of memory, because memory is important insofar as learning is concerned. Sensory memory, which is short-term memory. Going beyond that is a working memory, which could be also called short-term memory. The sensory memory is 1 second. Short-term memory or the working memory is 1 to 30 seconds. And long-term memory, which continues for the whole lifetime. So the knowledge input that gets into the sensory memory, so the first input from the outside world, the information and knowledge gets into the sensory memory, which lasts for a second, which gets fed into the short-term memory or the working memory 1 to 30 seconds, which is limited to 7 plus 2 independent chunks, as is explained in this PowerPoint, and which gradually gets transformed into long-term memory. And this is a lifetime, and one would be able to recall for the whole lifetime at any point of time that one has learned. So the function of memory is also best facilitated by concept map. The concept map, besides the previous PowerPoint, the concept map also facilitates the memories, sensory memory, short-term or working memory, and long-term memory. So what therefore is a concept map? If you allow me to go back again to the previous PowerPoint and say that what could be a concept map, that this is a technique for representing knowledge in graphs, that is network of concepts. We will see different kinds of networks that are available. The types of concept map that you see, 5 types that have been listed over here. There could be many more, and many more types of concept maps are coming up, and depending on the individual professor or individual teachers working through and knowledge about various learning theories and instructional design theories, one is able to draw concept map very differently. But basically these 5 types of concept maps are available to us, for which different kinds of software are available that we will talk about. A graphic organizer. In a graphic representation, this would guide learners through different concepts. If they could be plotted in a graph form, they would guide learners' thinking as they fill in and build up on a visual map. So visual learning is very important insofar as concept map is concerned. There are many who would learn better if there is a visual representation, and concept mapping would address that much better. That visual representation facilitates learning, and concept map addresses visual representation through varieties of means that how concepts could be represented. The concepts, their representation, their linkages, and what comes out through these linkages. This is precisely what a concept map would do, and concept mapping would facilitate to organize curriculum, to organize syllabus, to organize teaching learning, to organize teaching learning processes, as much as use of media and technology, as also finally that to design assessment rubrics or to develop assessment strategies, both formative and summative assessment. So graphic organizer would guide learners' thinking as they fill in and build up on a visual map. The facilitation of individual thinking, both teacher as well as students, through visual representation in graphs. We will see an example each a little later. Second, mind mapping, that visual representation of hierarchical information. that information which are hierarchically ordered, how to represent that visually. Mind mapping tools are available to us that which can facilitate us that how best we can represent various concepts in a hierarchical manner. 3, that webbing. That webbing technologies are available today. So, the brainstorming method that provides structure for ideas and facts. That in a webinar or in a web-based concept map exercise, that the students and teachers together would brainstorm that how best the ideas and facts could be structured in a manner. So, webbing would facilitate to do that, and webbing is best suited when there is a group learning, because graphic organization, mind mapping one can individually do, but webbing requires that the group of students and teachers together the brainstorm, and brainstorming is most important before jotting down the structures of ideas and facts in a network or in a visual form. 4, outlining. That is a preliminary summary of written work, typically hierarchically organized in headings and subheadings. So, when you organize, say, structure of a unit, when we say structure of a unit, this is basically representation of a structured way of teaching learning for that particular concept or that particular unit or particular chapter. So, outlining has been very useful as a matter of concept map strategy, which is helpful to all of us, that how to design our teaching learning materials in terms of self-learning materials, for instance. And finally, plotting and graphing. By using Venn diagrams, bar graphs, stack plots, pie charts, axis plots to interpret information and draw conclusions. Many times this plotting and graphing would also facilitate what a page of writing will not facilitate. So, friends, to put finally together, to summarize, that these 5 strategies or types of concept maps that are available here. Let us look at the graphic organizer. This is an example of a graphic organizer, this Charlotte's Web, which is very famous, and this tells us that how the learner's thinking would be facilitated by representation through graphic representation of the concept and joining them together. 2, that here is a mind map that is available. If you look at a little more closely, you will see that how mind mapping is done here. As we had said, that mind mapping is a visual representation of different hierarchical information. So, hierarchical information spread out through different colors. You see on the PowerPoint, different colors represent different aspects of that concept. So, mind mapping would join all this together, but which can be distinguished through different colors. So, one can see through how different concepts, sub-concepts branched out separately could join together to describe that particular concept. Here is an example of web mapping through internet and through websites and web technologies and so on and so forth. The historical period is a concept which has been spread through different web maps that are available to the individual, and these sources are also available, the sources of information that are available. One can link each sub-concept which is put in different box or a diagram or a figure or whatever form that you see to hypertext networks or hypertext linkages or hyperlinks to different printed, audio, video, and web resources that will be available, including YouTube, in fact Facebook, Twitter, and so whatever, wiki, blogs, and so on and so forth. So, this webbing is a strategy of concept mapping which can facilitate sub-concepts to join together and therefore see through that how best they are represented, they are linked together, and each one could be linked to through hypertext and hyperlinks to different other sources of knowledge and information that are available through different networks. Here is an example of outlining. This outline would facilitate us that outline, and one box talks about outline and the second box talks about the interpretation of the outlining. So, the outlining also facilitate how a topic could be taught. A topic could be divided into different concepts and sub-concepts, and finally summary is drawn that how best this represents the concept which is outlined in the upper box, and the lower box gives the summary of that. And finally, this is a graphic representation of plots and graphs, Venn diagrams, and so on and so forth. This tells us how different concepts are presented through different colors of this graph. Different colors represent different concepts or sub-concepts, how they are interlinked to each other, and this is a representation. A lot of data, a lot of such quantitative resources could be represented through these technique of plots and graphs. So friends, this is a typical representation of a concept map. This is done in a hierarchical manner. This is a concept map on the concept map itself, that you can study about concept mapping, the concept itself, about the concept mapping through this concept mapping. The concept map that is available here, the concept map which represents organized knowledge and which is concepts and context dependent and so on and so forth. You can derive till the last point which talk about different mapping segments. So this is a concept map on the concept map. This is given by Nobeck, who originated concept mapping as a technology or as a technique which can facilitate curriculum, syllabus design and teaching, learning and assessment. This is another representation of concept map. It's called mental maps. So say for instance, from the top down, mental maps are used to organize information, reconstruct ideas by constructing links and setting keywords, recalling knowledge and known information, by analyzing a problem, make a representation and analyze knowledge in order to analyze a problem and therefore solve a problem. This, what I said, is a concept is represented through this mind map. This would facilitate that each chunk could be developed into a chunk of learning, teaching and learning, a class, a period of study or a unit or a sub-unit or a video program and an audio program or a web resource or a blog or a wiki, collaborative wiki and so on and so forth. This concept mapping facilitates, I repeat, the concept mapping facilitates organization of different concepts, their linkages and therefore designing teaching learning strategies for teaching each concept, whether to create a discussion forum for that or to create a class discussion, to give an assignment, to do a direct lecturing, to have a seminar presentation or to let students do practically an assignment or do an activity based on a particular sub-concept. So the concept mapping facilitates teaching learning in a much more organized way because the students and teachers see through the different linkages and therefore visual representation facilitates learning better than otherwise it would have been possible. Let us look at taxonomy, the Bloom's taxonomy and concept mapping. As we have seen earlier programs that the taxonomy, especially the cognitive domain, that comprises of starting from the lower level of knowledge to comprehension and understanding to application to analysis of a concept which is given there and joining together, synthesizing various interpretations together to synthesis and finally making a judgment and evaluation. Therefore, based on these, the concept maps would simply mean mapping of keywords representative of a concept to establish a relationship among keywords and concepts and visual learners, and visual learning is best possible through concept mapping. So therefore, connection between keywords and the keywords which represent a concept or a sub-concept and establishing relationship among them, something leading to cause and effect relationship or a direct relationship, indirect relationship or a causal relationship and so on and so forth. Organizing information, and therefore through concept mapping it is possible to organize information in a more systematic, orderly way, assisting in learning. Therefore, comprehension of complex communication is possible and therefore refining meaning. That the meaning that one could understand, one could derive by interacting with the teacher, with the textbooks, with the context, with practical situation, laboratory and so on and so forth, could best understood if the concept map is represented in front of the students and teachers. And finally, information processing and making judgment later, assessment and evaluation. So information processing is best facilitated by concept mapping and making judgment later, that one could make a judgment. If the concept map is available to the student, at a later stage one looks back to the concept map and certainly in a better position to make judgment. And therefore, concept mapping would facilitate assessment and evaluation. That from where the questions that we put, the types of questions, short-term, objective, long-term questions, different other kinds of quizzes and so on and so forth, an activity, an assignment, all kinds of things, both formative and summative, could be best facilitated by concept map. If the concept map is available, the teacher is in a position to systematically, scientifically, objectively, and objectively design assessment strategies and evaluation strategies and develop a rubric of assessment by giving scores or grading and so on and so forth. And if it is credit based, then certainly, so credit and grading would be best facilitated by concept map. And concept map, finally friends, it's a collaborative tool, and cooperative learning is best possible. Cooperative learning, as we know, that working together and exchanging ideas, exchanging information, exchanging artifacts, exchanging outcomes, outputs, and learn from each other better. And concept map would facilitate, because in a brainstorming situation, if the students and teachers deliberate their concept maps and exchange concept maps, that would lead to richer concept maps and richer strategies for teaching and learning. And students would learn better in a cooperative learning situation. If concept maps are used, one concept map is shared by all to react, all students are allowed to develop their respective concept maps and exchange and discuss and finally come out the best representation of connections between concepts, and therefore learn better. Concept map and online learning, that online learning happens at the generalization stage, focusing, application, and consolidation. If we can divide 4 stages of online learning, at the generalization stage, that the students find linkages and clarity in background information that is provided to them, and concept map facilitates establishing these linkages and the background information. Focusing stage, the specific understanding of topics and skills, the concept map also facilitates these. At the application stage, which involves problem solving, computer-based learning instruments for assessment, and so on and so forth, concept map would facilitate, would direct that what kind of tools, assessment tools could be used for what kind of concept and sub-concepts and problem solving. And especially in online learning, concept mapping would help better than what a teacher could do within the classroom. And finally, at the consolidation stage of learning, that summary of previous information, repetition of applications. Concept maps could provide a summary of the information that is already given, already studied, already taught and learned, and students have already gone through, and therefore an assessment strategy could best suit the assessment or evaluation of that learning which has happened within individual students. And repetition of application, because once a concept map is in front of you, that you are in a better position to repeat that application, because you are objectively, scientifically very sure that how this has happened, and which is black and white available on pen and paper, or as a printout, or as a computer storage, or as a visual representation, otherwise available in video. This is one representation which you could look at very closely and see that what benefits of using online mind maps for e-learning. The online mind maps are available. This is a mind map, but this is a representation of that how best online mind maps would be facilitated in teaching learning for the teachers and students. Mind map and online learning that we talked about in a PowerPoint presentation just a little before, but if you organize online learning, planning, collaboration, participation, preparation for the examination, and flipping the classroom. So these activities are flipping the online classroom in this case. All these 5 aspects which are part of online learning would be facilitated by mind map or the concept map. Mind mapping as one strategy of concept mapping that is available to us, that we have already seen. That the planning of online learning, planning of teaching learning, collaboration within online learning, participation in online activities, which may be a surrogate or virtual representation of workplace activity, for instance, or activity from the community, or activity from the world of work, would be available to the students, and they would best participate, and concept maps would facilitate better. And online concept maps which can be accessed all the time, which are available then and there at the liberty of the students, they could always refer to in individual situation and in group situation with the help of the mentor, that they could best engage in teaching, learning, and participation of the activities. Preparation for the examination, one can always recall and call back and look through the concept map, and as a preparation, as a quick go through for different concepts and sub-concepts and their linkages to prepare for the examination. Flipping the classroom, this is the best strategy that is used within the classroom, a physical classroom, face-to-face classroom, and otherwise in an online classroom also, that the students representing their own outputs and outcomes in terms of an activity and sharing within the classroom and learning better, and concept map facilitate this. So friends, by this PowerPoint to conclude that as much as face-to-face classroom, in online teaching learning classroom, in online community of practice, for instance, that mind maps and concept maps would facilitate better in teaching learning, in planning, collaborating, engaging in activities or participation, preparing for the examination, and flipping within the classroom. Different software that are available to us that are listed over here, that varieties of software, and the most used software today is inspiration software, and varieties of different categories of inspiration software that are available today to draw different kinds of concept maps. So you could draw a concept map by yourself in pen and paper, by boxes, by networks, by hierarchies, by tree diagram, and so on and so forth, or else one can draw on computer through a Word file, or else the software that are available to draw concept maps. Depending on the type of subject, type of concept, the learner group, the context in which learning is taking place, and the level of learning, primary, elementary, secondary, senior secondary, college, university, research, and so on and so forth. So friends, to conclude this PowerPoint by simply saying that the concept maps would facilitate teaching learning much better by organizing curriculum systematically, by dividing the curriculum into syllabus, into units of study in a modular fashion, in credit based, and organized teaching and learning, organized learning resources. Learning resources are print, audio, video, graphics, animation, activities, laboratory experiments, and so on, and kits, and so on and so forth. The process of teaching learning is facilitated by a concept map, and finally the media and technology, of course, and finally the assessment strategies, the assessment rubric can be built around the concept map. If you simply send a concept map to an examiner, to an evaluator to set a paper, the paper setter would be in a better position through the concept map only. The content list and the concept map could design a good question paper than somebody who would be deprived of a concept map. We generally don't do that. We simply send the list of topics to the examiners and they set the question papers. It would be best that if we can send concept maps and learning objectives to the examiners, learning objectives based on Bloom's taxonomy, behavioristic, cognitivist, or constructivist theories, any kind of learning objectives for that chapter, for that program, for that paper, for that course, as well as the concept map that is drawn connecting the different concepts for each chapter. If we can send to the examiner, the assessor would be in a better position to set question papers as well as assess and such scripts. So Inspiration software, this is the Inspiration company, Inspiration Inc., which has developed this. The Chan Bok has developed an action idea processor 5.0, which is extremely useful in designing and developing concept map. Page by Gopher CMap 2.0 for Macintosh, which is available, Macintosh company. Decision Explorer, this was called earlier the Graphoscope by Banksia Software, which has developed this Decision Explorer, and each one you can click from this PowerPoint itself and go through the web and see through, and these are all available free. The SAMNet Research Group, which developed the SAMNet, which has developed the concept map software for this, which can be used. Michael Jeter, MindMan, developed by him, could be useful for developing good concept map. The makers of VisiMap and InfoMap have developed COCO systems, which are also equally facilitative of concept mapping. The Time Systems International has developed the activity mapping, which are useful to design activities and find connections between activities and the outcomes of activities, the process of activities, and so on and so forth by individual students, by groups of students. This would facilitate within the classroom and in online learning contexts. Piet Commerce, whom I met long time back in a different country doing a keynote together, he has developed the text vision, TextNet as you would call, or text vision, which is facilitating concept mapping in a better way for the digital world. Smart Technologies has developed Smart Ideas, which is a software which can be used to develop concept maps. And the Mind Mapper, EGLE Magic, they have developed, and the Mind Mapper company has developed this. And there are many more software that are available today, but these are usually, and especially most used software today is the Inspiration software, which facilitates varieties of concept mapping, and there are different formats within the Inspiration software available to develop concept map. Friends, therefore, to conclude finally this presentation by simply saying that concept maps are techniques or technologies, strategies which facilitate representation and connections between concepts and sub-concepts within a chapter, within a paper, within a course, or within a program of study, and therefore link to the learning objectives and so on and so forth, facilitating organization of learning resources, print, audio, video, and so on and so forth, and multimedia, online learning, web-based learning, and so on and so forth, and process of teaching learning within the classroom, outside the classroom, in laboratories, in activity-based situations, in community of practice, and so on and so forth, even in online learning environment, web representation or surrogate representation of the practical work environment, and finally that these facilitate in the assessment strategies to develop an assessment rubric and assign for each concept and sub-concept their linkages and activities, different scores or different grades, and develop question papers based on that. As I said earlier, if we send the learning objectives, the content outline and concept maps to the assessors, paper setters and evaluators, they would best do the job of setting question papers as well as assessing answer scripts in different forms, in written, in audio, video, in activity, laboratory forms. Then what could happen if they are not provided concept maps? So therefore, friends, we could try out concept maps in our teaching learning and see that how best we can systematically, objectively and scientifically take teaching learning into consideration. That doesn't necessarily mean that the concept map would restrict our creativity, our independence and our autonomy as teachers to teach in a more systematic way, the way teacher feels the best to teach and teacher is competent to teach, because even no twins are the same, no two students are the same, no two teachers are the same, and therefore the teachers have all the freedom that they can systematically visualize their teaching learning. But what is important here is that they can use this concept map the way they like and systematically present, and therefore this is very much visible, communicable, this is transparent, and this is more democratic, that we tell students that how teaching learning is taking place, what is being taught and what is being assessed. And finally, any evaluator or accreditor which comes to evaluate the institution and the program of study would see through that how teaching learning has taken place through concept maps. Even an employer who employs a graduate could see through the learning objectives and concept maps of that course of study and see through that how students have got engaged in different activities and so on and so forth. So friends, with this conclude the program by simply saying that you could try concept maps in your own teaching learning. Thank you very much indeed.